And that's why I asked President Harris to travel to the region last August.
A lot of parents are watching about baby formula. If you have a message to those parents that you can share while they're listening.
Well, three questions. I'll answer the baby formula question because all of a sudden it's on the front page of every newspaper, and it's important that I be responded to.
Should you have taken those steps sooner before parents got to these shelves and couldn't find formula?
If we'd been better mind readers, I guess we could have, but we moved as quickly as the problem became apparent to us. And we have to move with caution as well as speed. By the way, I see Secretary Kerry and down there, and John, thanks for letting me into your old house. Appreciate it. John has forgotten more about, in my view, the needs we have for climate security than anyone that I know. And thanks, John, for being here. I want to talk about that a little bit.
The fact that they're not coming down, they have no indications that they're planning a visit. What does that tell you? With or without Title 42, it's going to remain a problem and a worsening one, won't it?
You know, pretty much it tells us that the borders are being ignored. It is sad. We are U.S. Citizens also. We live in the border. You know, a higher percentage of the population is Hispanic. So unfortunately, that sends a huge message for us. You know, we are totally being ignored here in the border, and that's not, you know, what the U.S. should be about.
Do you, as a White House, consider this a crisis?
Well, I don't think it's about a label. I think it's about addressing directly the need that families all across the country have. Listen, I'm a mom. I have 2 young kids. I'm not terribly far removed from the days of feeding my kids with formula. I know, and we know, and the president knows how stressful this is for families across the country. It's why he's taken action.
Of course, you said if it's for one family, Kate, it's going to be a crisis. But is there a hesitation against calling this a crisis if that's what it is?
I can tell you there is no hesitation against acting, which is what the president's doing, and it's what this administration is doing.
This is hardly the first time that there's this slow-rolling anticipated disaster happening exactly as forewarned, whether it's the exit from Afghanistan, the border surge. The Biden administration does not want to call this a crisis. You just called it a crisis. It's a crisis, right?
I mean, I think if you're a parent that can't get formula for your kid, it's a crisis.
With regard to the leniency of prosecutors, that has, on balance, not been the biggest problem, the leniency of prosecutors. In the past, the hardest process has been the intensity of prosecutors, people getting long sentences for crimes that are, anyway. And bail reform, I think bail reform and the negative side of bail reform is vastly overrated. The idea that if you have no ability to make bail because you're poor, it should relate to the severity of the crime and what the problem is related that you're accused of.
Biden has said that inflation is the number one priority for the Biden White House to try to get under control right now. How does inflation compare to this newly important in the sense of the Supreme Court decision pending? How do those two issues compare?
Well, I don't think they compare. I think they actually reinforce each other. So the fact that things like inflation can happen and it can become more expensive to feed your kids and to fuel your car is exactly why people need to be able to be in charge of how many mouths they're going to have to feed. So I think the fact that we're seeing this jump in expenses, that we're seeing people having to pay more in the grocery store, pay more at the pump, pay more for housing is a reason that people are saying, I need to be able to make my own decisions about when and if to start a family. So I don't think we're going to see them. I don't think it's about comparing them or contrasting them. I think they reinforce for people just how big of a responsibility it is to take care of a family.
Amazingly, this White House tweet is still up. They tweeted it yesterday. It says, quote, when President Biden took office, millions were unemployed and there was no vaccine available. I mean, that's not true. There was vaccine available. CNN fact checker Daniel Dale points out more than 3 million Americans had been fully vaccinated. More than 18 million had at least one shot by inauguration day. I think President Biden, then President-elect Biden, had 2 shots by then. You're the president's chief medical advisor. Why is the White House politicizing the pandemic by tweeting out that there was no vaccine available until Joe Biden became president? It's not true.
You know, Jake, I'm sorry. I can't explain every tweet that comes out. So you're talking to the wrong person. I wasn't involved in the tweet. I just can't explain it. Sorry.
But I know you can't explain it, but certainly you would agree that it's important to have facts when it comes to assertions being made about the vaccine, whether it's from the Trump White House or the Biden White House. And certainly you would agree that there was vaccine available before Joe Biden became president?
Yeah, of course. I mean, he got vaccinated and others got vaccinated. So, I mean, I think from a pure accuracy, that's not a correct statement. But, I mean, you know, it just went out. I'm sorry. There's nothing I could do about that, Jake.
Said that the administration has been on top of this issue since this issue emerged with the Abbott plant back in February, and you've been working on this issue since then. So can you explain why something like this, in terms of streamlining the import of products, wasn't done sooner, wasn't done before parents arrived at the supermarket to find empty shelves?
Well, we believe that part of what's happening right now is that there was supply that a lot of the larger retailers had, and it was kind of that we're continuing to push states to do.
Is there more you think you could have done sooner?
Well, look, hindsight is always 20/20, but I would say that we have what's important to note as much as this wasn't being reported on because people were not seeing shortages at the stores as much, there was an announced recall back in February, right? And there were steps we have been taking every single day since then, with the FDA in the lead to help address any potential.
Brought by families that were separated at the border.
Yeah.
And at the time, the White House said, if it saves taxpayer dollars and puts the disastrous history of the previous administration's use of zero tolerance and family separation behind us, the president is perfectly comfortable with the Department of Justice settling with the individuals and families who are currently in litigation. CBS News review of court records published this week, however, finds that the Justice Department is actually seeking to dismiss all lawsuits filed by migrant families requesting compensation over the separations during the Trump years. Just curious, how do the Justice Department's moves to dismiss those cases line up with what was said here last fall and the overall commitment to bringing justice to these people? And is the administration willing to return to the negotiating table to try to forge some kind of a settlement with them, since the president, among others, has called that policy criminal?
It was, and the president believes it was horrific and inhumane. And our statement made last fall stands. Now, these are negotiations and discussions being led by the Department of Justice. I don't have any confirmation of that report. I'd certainly point you to them for the status of any discussion.